So what this video is going to be is pretty much just a point. That's it. This video is going to make a point that I think is worth making, and it comes to us in the form here of a Pro Hockey Rumours article that I saw that really kind of opened my eyes to this entire idea, which is why I'm even making a video about it here in the first place. So I'll leave a link in the description to this article right here, go ahead and read it. But the article title right here kind of goes over the entire idea that I wanted to proclaim in this video here. The salary cap lower limit complicates a Jack Eichel trade. Now, salary cap lower limit, what exactly is that? Well, in the NHL, we all kind of know there's a salary cap, which means that, okay, you're not allowed to spend more money than the salary cap number, which this year is going to be the same as it was last year, because we have a flat cap, and yeah, the NHL, we're in a great place right now, aren't we? $81.5 million is the salary cap, which means that you're not allowed to spend over that cap unless there are extenuating circumstances like LTIR contracts, for example. There also is a cap floor, which means this is the amount of money you are supposed to spend at the very least. Now, the cap floor in the NHL is actually $60.2 million right now. So NHL teams have to spend at least $60 million on their players per year, with a max of $81.5 million. This article here goes over how exactly that 60.2 lower limit makes things really difficult for the Buffalo Sabres unless they go out there and do some really specific things post-Jack Eichel trade or in the Jack Eichel trade itself. The article goes over Jack Eichel and it talks about the situation here. We've been chronicling everything here on this YouTube channel if you hadn't seen it already. But one of the things that has been discussed at length is the fact that Jack Eichel and his $10 million AAV is difficult for other teams to fit under the cap ceiling. Jack Eichel is a top player when healthy, but his injury situation makes it extremely risky for anyone interested in acquiring his services. There's also another complication caused by his contract, though, and this one has gotten far less attention. In fact, it's basically the opposite problem of an acquiring team not being able to afford Eichel. The Sabres cannot really afford to take Eichel off the books at this point. Right now, there are two teams in the NHL that are actually well short of the NHL's lower limit of $60.2 million. The Ottawa Senators and, you guessed it, the Buffalo Sabres. According to Cap Friendly, Buffalo currently sits at a projected cap hit for the 2021-2022 season of just $52 million, more than $7.3 million under the lower limit. But they have Mittelstadt, Dahlin, and Jokiharju to sign, you might say. And that's true. And if you re-sign Mittelstadt, Dahlin, and Jokiharju in your heads, you'll probably use these three RFAs to take the team over the cap floor. The problem is, that projection is already including the $10 million owed to Eichel. If the team trades Eichel, suddenly they're more than $17.3 million under the lower limit, a number that'll be a lot more difficult to make with Dahlin, Jokiharju, and Mittelstadt's re-signings. Now, the article then goes over the fact that they lost Ristolainen, they lost Reinhart, they lost Ullmark, they lost McCabe, they lost all these guys, and now they have just some other players to come in like Anderson and Pisak, guys that are under $1 million, and the fact that Will Butcher also went out there and had salary retained when they traded for him with the New Jersey Devils. This is a team that kind of needs to spend a little bit more money. And assuming you trade Jack Eichel for a lower price of what has been asked, it's going to be difficult to go out there and actually reach the cap floor, unless you're going out there and legitimately getting a top 6 forward that is below 25, that is on a bridge deal or whatever, and you're getting a defenseman as well, because, I mean, that's been the price that Kevin Adams has reportedly laid out for other teams in this entire Jack Eichel saga anyway. If it's just prospects and picks, I don't know if you're going to get the necessary salary needed to actually get a Sabres team over the cap floor with the Jokiharju, Mittelstadt, and Dahlin re-signings. Because, hey, let's face it, if you go Casey Mittelstadt, let's say $2.5 million, for Dahlin, let's say you go $5-6 million on a bridge deal, and then Jokiharju, let's say you go like 3 or 4. That number right there, if you just ballpark all these numbers together, 2 plus 5 plus 4 I mean, $11 million, they would still need about $6 million more to actually reach the cap floor, assuming they trade Jack Eichel. Now, are you probably going to go out there and get yourselves a $6 million AAV young forward? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe a defenseman as well. Maybe you get two $3 million guys to make up for it. But do assets like that even exist? And if they do, would they be available for trade in an Eichel scenario? We know the Buffalo Sabres are not going to retain salary on Jack Eichel, mostly because, firstly, it's $10 million a year. Secondly, his contract goes on till 2026, and while that's a very, very good contract for a guy when healthy who plays to the standard that Jack Eichel does, it is a pretty big number for a long time. So for the Sabres having a problem like this where they're so below the cap floor, it's only really going to be like this for this year, I would think, because by the time next year rolls around, we figure that the Sabres would most likely find a way to get over the cap floor and to be consistently in that territory where they're complying with salary cap limitations and qualifications. So I don't know how smart it would be to just go out there and say, all right, let's just start to retain salary then. Let's just retain, I don't know, $1 million or $2 million or whatever, just to help us reach that cap floor. Because, I mean, you know how the old saying goes, right? You don't want to go out there and do permanent solutions for temporary problems, especially if those solutions in the long term would end up hurting you in a lot more ways than they would today. So there are a few other ideas that you could go out there and propose. Okay, do you want to do like a Brent Seabrook, Tyler Johnson kind of deal, where one of these contracts on the LTIR gets sent over to your team, and maybe you don't even put him on the LTIR. Maybe you just activate the contract regularly. Maybe you go out there and acquire a guy who's just a complete bum, who can be a technical scratch. Like any of these players that have big money contracts that would only last for a year or two, like for example, Ryan Kesler, his name has been on the trade block. I don't know if you're actually able to activate that kind of contract just for the sake of doing it, but Kesler, for example, is a guy making $6.8 million till, guess what, 2022. If the Anaheim Ducks want to stick around in these trade talks, then hey, maybe send over a Kesler with another one of your things. But you know what? I'm kind of doubting that now that I said that out loud, because we had the entire debacle going on with the Anaheim Ducks talking about how they don't want to give up a Trevor Zegras or a Drysdale. If they add a Kesler to this trade, all of a sudden that's negative value getting off of their team, which means they would have to give more to the Sabres in order to actually get the Sabres to accept it, in theory. Now, I don't know if that would really be the case, because if Kessler's helping out the Sabres in this way, then who really knows if there would need to be an addition on the asking price for Buffalo. But that's just kind of me spitting off the top of the dome here, because this still is indeed an issue, because Middlestad, Dahlin, Jokiharju, the rest of the RFAs that the Sabres have, it's not going to be enough, especially since you just lost out on Reinhart and all the other guys that are getting big money elsewhere. Ristolainen's gone to Philly. Reinhart just signed 6.5 by 3 in Florida. And the rest of the Buffalo Sabres and their staff, I mean, it's all accounted for with just Middlestad, Dahlin, and Jokiharju. Maybe you go long-term then. Maybe you say, okay, Rasmus Dahlin, let's just bite the bullet here. We'll go 8 years and let's say 8.5. Give you the Thomas Chabot treatment right here. Maybe you do that and try to help yourself get over the cap floor and reach that $17 million threshold that would be freed up if Jack Eichel were to be traded for nothing. Maybe you go out there, you acquire another defenseman or a forward, or somebody that can help out your team in an Eichel trade that would be costing a little bit more than $3, $4, $5 million to help you out there. But because the possibility does exist that Jack Eichel gets traded and you don't reach that cap floor, that's just kind of why I wanted to make this video over here, because I do think it is an important aspect to talk about at the very least. It might not even be a concern in like a week from now. Most likely not. I feel like the Buffalo Sabres are a little bit more competent than we give them credit for, and that they would be able to actually reach the floor, but who knows? Talk to me in the comments, though, what you think. I will leave a link in the description to the Pro Hockey Rumours article that we're talking about here, just for your own viewing pleasure right there. But talk to me in the comments what you think either way about Jack Eichel, the salary cap floor, the Buffalo Sabres, what they need to do to reach that salary cap floor, what they're going to give out to Middlestad, Jokiharju, and Dahlin. Actually, yeah, that's a really interesting conversation. What do you think those guys are going to get? The contracts, let's lay those out in the comment section below, because I really do think that opens up another opportunity for some pretty good discussion as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.